That's who I want.
Yeah, what I think one of Bob Bowlesby's strong suits was that we really found out when it came down to the new 12-team playoff proposal is that, and he didn't get credit for this as much, and it's because, look, his job is to advocate for the Big 12. I mean, that's what his job is. His number one thing is to advocate for the Big 12, but also not to do that at the expense of the greater good of college football, because he had the greater good of college football and college athletics at the heart of everything he was doing, but particularly college football, since that drives everything. And he's a man who believes that college football is better when it's inclusive and not when it's some kind of, Dubai resort that only billionaires can go to, which is what certain parties want it to be.
Well, we've seen soccer try to pull it off. We've seen golf try and go that direction, right? With old Phil Mickelson trying to do their whole Super League thing. And, when the expansion first started, there were those rumblings, what's this whole alliance thing about? And it turns out it's about a whole lot of nothing, really. It's about lobbying. It's about voting and lobbying and boring political stuff that I know it matters. It's just, I just hate politics. And so that's not really of interest to me, although I know it does have some, power to it. It's just not what it was marketed as.
But if you were a mind, and that's the other thing about the greater good of college football, is I want a commissioner who is going to be morally conflicted if he walks up on stage knowing that what he's about to say is not going to make the fans happy. It's not going to be good for them. When last year the three commissioners, Jim Phillips, George Kliavkoff, and Kevin Warren, and I think Kevin Warren knew this more than anyone else, and the other two might have suspected it, that the Big Ten never had any intention of scheduling the ACC and Pac-12 teams.
Yep.
It was not that, but when they got up and said, hey, we've got this alliance together, and it's going to be about scheduling and all this, it was basically to maybe slow the Big 12's role when it came to maybe calling some teams that might be on the fringe of happiness where they are, especially some of those teams in the Pac-12. And it was just about making sure that they got their political agenda through. And it had nothing to do with seeing Washington play Clemson or Ohio State and USC have a 4-game home and home. It wasn't about that. That's what I'd like to see from a commissioner, someone who goes, you know what, let's not do that BS. What's the best thing for all of us together and all of college football, even if you have to give a little something up? And again, I don't understand what the SEC and Big Ten would necessarily be giving up outside of a little bit of money, which I know it's all about the money, but in the short term, in the long term, I would think they could Scrooge McDuck their way to multiple college football national titles.
The SEC and Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, short term, I would see them going, well, the reason we're not doing this is we're going to lose money on the front end, but I think on the back end, they'll make up more than enough if you do it right.
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously a ploy just to kind of capture people's attention and make it sound like something it was not, so that it was more easily digestible, because you start talking about the political side of voting blocks, and I mean, who really cares about, I know people care, but in general, I don't think people are all that interested on the outside of, voting blocks in conference college athletics meetings, but they are, as it turns out, somewhat important. And we see that with the way the playoff stalemates and discussions are going on. But, yeah, I mean, I think that all got, just blown up in excitement initially of oh, yeah, this is great. I mean, look, because, that announcement, that solidified the Pac-12 for a while. The Big Ten didn't need solidifying, but it did sort of solidify the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 was one that was dangling out there like the Big 12, not as injured with top programs leaving, but there sure was a lot of scuttlebutt, and sure enough, they were scurrying right after that to be a part of this alliance. So it's clear there's some leaks coming through their roof a little bit that they felt they were able to patch up with that thing, and then the Big 12 was left to flounder and ultimately was able to find a life raft. But, I think everybody's looking out for their best interest, and that will need to be the case for the Big 12 commissioner as well. But I do think they should have their minds on. Also, what is the best for college football? I don't know how many people really have that in mind right now. So that would be a nice trait. I don't know how far it would take you, because it is a world where I don't think that's the case for most. I think everybody's about themselves. So that's why I worry a little bit about college football, because it kind of depends on what audience you're talking to. There's one audience that they hear idea of college football in 10 years is going to be 2 conferences playing NFL style, and some people think that's great, and they think it's great because their team's a part of it and they could care less about everybody else. And there's people on the outside going, I guess that would be kind of cool, but that's not really college football, and that's not really what we grew up with. And that's where people are coming from. It's not a jealousy or a brand envy or anything like that. It's just like, what is this? Like, what are we trying to turn this thing into? And I just think people have different ideas, and a lot of it has to do with money and agendas. And I don't know what direction it's actually going, but I do know whoever's in charge of the Big 12 needs to have their eye on every little angle and be wary of a team still getting poached, despite, what securities they feel that they may have. They need to be wary of that. They need to be wary of you've seen the moves that have been made behind the scenes over the last year, so they need somebody who's going to be able to sniff that type of thing out or be able to react immediately to said, backdoor meetings or negotiations or whatever the case may be. So, there's a lot. When you start to add it up, there's like 5 or 6 traits you would want out of the new commissioner. They got a lot on their plate, obviously. They've got the future of the conference in a very weird, mysterious, uncertain position right now. And not only this conference, but I think a lot of people, even the ones that have money, I think they know where they're going, and the ones with the most money are driving the bus, but I don't think they really know how to get to the end point just yet.
Yeah.
I think they may have thought they did, and then turns out a few streets were closed down by Bob Bowlesby and then, by other things. So, yeah, I think everybody's navigating as best they can, and somebody just with a clear eye and a clear vision and some stones about them is going to be much needed moving forward. Because I do think people feel like you can just kind of kick around the Big 12, and I think they need to somehow try and flip that idea of them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting when the book is written on Bob